Welcome to the Sports Card Professor. I'm Darren, and today I'm going to be ranking the best card designs of 1991 across all the sports. Now, it's interesting when you do a focused ranking and then when you combine together with others, sometimes your rankings will kind of change because something that looks really significant isolated may not look the same way when you combine together with other options. So it is kind of interesting to see if something kind of moves around in rankings between one type of ranking and another. So this is the way that when I look at all of the cards, these are the ones that I feel really do kind of jump out. And I'm starting off with the honorable mention being 1991-92 Skybox. The reason this is here on the list is because the previous year, 1990-91, I thought that Skybox set was really an all-time great card. It was a phenomenal card that they made. The whole concept of the card was great, but it also is a card design that can actually hold up over the years. The problem with the 1991's card set was the fact that they made something that was truly amazing for 91. But it was amazing for 1991. That's the problem, is these types of effects were they were a very period affair. And because they had what was essentially a full bleed of white off the side of every one of the cards, every card stands only as the picture of the player and the effect behind, which is cool, but every effect is different. And so there's nothing that ties the cards across throughout the card set. You have to look at each card individually, and even when you do that, the way that the card is designed, it's more about the background than it is about the player. There's no marriage between the two. So I can't do a best card design video without talking about this set, but at the same time, it doesn't have the strength to be a great card, not compared to the other ones that I have on the list. So here it is as the honorable mention. That being said, as I get into the list of the top 5, I have 2 cards at number 5 because they're both great at something, but they're like equal opposites. And the first of these 2 is Topps Baseball. Now, in 1991, Topps made the same design across all 3 sports. They weren't doing basketball, but they did hockey, football, and baseball with the same design for the first time ever. And it worked. It didn't really work in hockey. It did work really well in football. Not great cards, but pretty good cards. But baseball is where they put all of their effort into. And it really shone. So they were celebrating 40 years of cards from their first 1952 baseball set all the way through here to 1991. This was the 40th set. And they've been making basically the same type of card. It was the same, pretty much the same card stock, everything about the card was basically the same. They just made little tweaks here and there over the years. And that was a bold move to make all the way out to 1991. They were hanging on with their fingernails, and they were going to need to make some changes soon, and they would. But they'd need to catch up in a hurry. The fact that they tried to continue to make essentially the same type of card, even in 1991, was bold. But in a way, it was kind of a nice tribute for that 40-year run. So the card back is what the card back is. It works for what it is. But the card front, this was a place they needed to really invest. They wanted to celebrate, and they wanted to remind people that they were the baseball card, or they were the card. And so they put all their effort into the baseball set, focusing on images. That was it. That was the focus of their cards. They'd seen what worked well with Score and especially with Pro Set and football, and they knew that's what they needed to do. So they put so much effort into it, and the dividends were great. Almost all of these cards were really strong. Some were truly phenomenally strong in terms of the image selection they made, which was what they needed to do. But on top of that, they got the border out of the way. So the border was very thin. They used team colors, and it was an accentuation of the player inside. So here was a case where the card front it's exactly what they needed. The problem is that it's all reliant on the picture. So there's there's very little actual card design. That's the limitation. It's not a huge limitation, but if we're here talking about the top 5, or in this case, the top 6 cards, you've got to really bring your A game. And Score, with their set Pinnacle, did the exact opposite by focusing their attention on the border. The card design of 1991 Pinnacle was great. I love all the black on it. They have some nice color fades. They have colored text. All of these elements are really strong on this card. It's also overpowering, and there's just a little picture in there that you may not even notice. That's basically the limitation this card has, is that everything about the card design is great, even on the card back, except for the picture of the player. So it's kind of like these two cards are two halves of one of the great cards of all time. One card needs a good picture, the other card simply is a good picture. So I don't know which direction to go with this, because they both fail in the same way and they both succeed in the same way. It's just in mirror opposite of each other. So both of these cards are worthy of number 5. I just don't think that one actually clears the other. But moving on from there, number 4 is very clear, and to me, I could almost put this at number 3. I just can't quite do it. And that's 1991-92 Upper Deck basketball. Now, this basketball set is really significant because this is the first time that Upper Deck finally made the card set that they'd been charging us for all these years. The 1990-91 Upper Deck hockey set was good, and the 91 proper football set was also very good, but neither of those were great. And that's the difference here with the 91-92 basketball set. I think that this is a great card. On the card front, not the card back. But the thing that makes this card really work well is the fact that it is a perfect combination. It's a perfect marriage of image and design. They fuse together beautifully. And that's almost kind of the problem, is the fact that the image doesn't pop. There isn't a distinct quality to the image that really jumps out. And the border doesn't really have any distinction either. So it all runs together into a beautiful combination. But they didn't have the energy of the sport. And that was something that basketball really needed, because at this time, as late as 1991, basketball was still introducing itself to the world. Michael Jordan was not the biggest athlete in the world, but he was really close. But the thing is, people knew who Michael Jordan was. They didn't know about basketball. They didn't know the NBA. The NBA was still growing and growing and growing. And they needed something that had that type of power to cause people to really turn their heads. And so in the world of card collecting, we had Skybox, which was impressive, but we didn't have much else from that to really capture the eye. And while the Upper Deck cards are gorgeous cards, they don't have the pop. They don't have the energy that you are going to see in the next couple that I'm going to show you, but also even with the Topps baseball, the energy that they have in that, with the excitement of being in the game, which was captured with Topps, is not quite here with the set. So it's a great combination of a card. It's a really well blended affair. It just doesn't have the energy that we're going to need, which is why for number 3, I still have Pro Set football sitting above that. Now, Pro Set is about as simplified as you can possibly get. In 1990, they made a great card where they went half bleed, and it was a super powerful card. They were going to need to improve upon that, because of course you're going to improve. And they went ahead and got rid of the border completely and focused on great image selection, which was their forte. That was their thing. They went out and worked really hard on the images. And it paid off. Here's a card that's a full bleed card. There's no border anywhere, except they have a little theme down at the bottom of 2 colors of the team. And that ties the cards together and makes the feeling of a set. Each card has a dynamic quality because of it, but the images carry so well. And the images carry the energy and excitement of the game, which is really what you want. I don't have a lot of complaints about this card. I think it is technically a better card than the 1990 set. In fact, it may be technically the best card design of 1991. The problem is, technically the best card design is not the same as the most enjoyable. And that's where this card set has a problem, is that it is a wonderful mathematical achievement. It's not necessarily an aesthetic success. And that is why I have at number 2, the Score football set. This is, to me, this is the first card set I remember where, in my mind, when I'm just thinking about cards, I don't really think about this card very much. I usually go, oh yeah, I remember collecting that. I'm not sure why. But every time I look at it, this is the card that sucks me back to that point of discovering something magical. As much as 1990 Pro Set is really like my childhood home in a way. The 91 score set is the one that was really just capturing my imagination as a kid. There are forgettable qualities to this card, but when you look at the card, this is where they got everything right. They have great image selection, just like with Pro Set, but where Pro Set pulls you into the game, it doesn't have the personality of the image selection of Score. Score somehow is able to create cards that where you were feeling kind of like a journey, kind of like a story of what was going on with the images. And that's partially because they have the player actually popping out of frame out into the border. And this was a trick they were able to take advantage of to create the same effect that the full bleed effect of the Pro Set was able to capture, where the action literally just runs right off and pulls you in. Well, here they're doing kind of the same thing by popping out of frame and making the player actually pull off of the card and stand in kind of an isolated way that's very personal to you and pulls you in. And so the fact that they were able to do that with some images that had kind of like a story-like quality to them, these cards were phenomenal. And I love the colors. I don't like the fade from one side to the other. I'm not a fan of that. But otherwise, it is really, really, really impressive. And on the card back, I love the gold band around the outside. So the combination of this, to me, this is about really telling the story of being a football fan. But for number one is a best of all worlds. It really is. It's one of those rare cases where everything just gets perfect, and that's with 91 action-packed football. Action-packed has always had an unfair advantage. It has relief, so the card is literally 3D. And by doing that, it really does pull out into the space that you're in and pull you into the action. But you got to be able to pull all of those pieces together in a way that reads well. And in 1990, they did not do it. In 91, they did. They went with a full bleed. So just like with Pro Set, they were doing a great job of allowing the action to spill off of the card. But while that was happening, the middle of the card was pulling out toward you. So that combination of the two meant that the player really stood out. But they also used a high gloss for the picture of the player and a very strong saturation of the colors. So the combination of that meant that the player was very, very, very vibrant. And then you have gold as just a detail on it, just a hint. It's basically gold used in the proper way. So it's an elegant enunciation of what's going on. So you have a whole combination of all of this. You have the helmet down there, which is great. It really did succeed in making the card do everything I'd been talking about with the image selection, the forward upfront quality of some of these shots, the fact that you get the energy, the dynamic energy, you're pulled in, you're feeling all of that. This card pulled all of it off. I don't have much to say about the card back. It's a good card back, not a great card back, but the card front, to me, this was one of those rare cases where Action Packed was able to actually cash in on the amazing potential it had. It rarely did take advantage of the fact that you were actually personally engaged. This pulled you into the action without the necessity for shoulder pads. So great. So to me, this is how I rank all the cards of 1991 as far as the upper tier, and the reason why. You'll notice that I really do like to get pulled into the action and be a part of it, and that's something that 1991 saw a lot of. So that great year for that. But definitely let me know what your take is on my list down below, and check out my other rankings if you haven't had a chance to view those. Check out my other videos and subscribe if you haven't done that either. And yeah, thank you very much for watching.